We were in intents part, right? So we are checking out the intent and how exactly it works, and then so once the intent is done, we'll learn something on notifications too, right? So let me start with one more topic on intent, which is very important topic as such, which is called as a activity result. Now, what is activity result? We basically call it as activity result. So most of the time, right, we would have actually came across this activity result, but we don't know that actually that is an activity result. Now, so to give you an example, let us say you have an mobile app, right? So where you have a form to fill, right? A simple form to fill, or a simple e-commerce app you have, and you want to select some. So you have selected something called some fruits option, and it will open up all the fruits. So when you select on any fruit, right, it has to go back and it has to fill that cart, right? Normally that is what happens, which means here you don't have to write everything, like you don't have to write much of code that okay, the request is going from one activity to other activity, and in that activity, in second activity, when whatever you select in second activity, it has to come back to the first activity. This is the thing what we are actually checking out now, right? Now for this, normally if you want to write it in a normal way, right, then it is going to be much cumbersome. But in Android, right, internally there is something which you can actually implement so that this process will become more easy than we actually mean to code for the complete process we have, right? Now that is something which is called as an activity result. Activity result, which means you have one window. When I click on this window, let us say I'm going to second window. So from this second window option, I want to select something, and immediately I want to get back to one. So that is called as your activity result which we have, right? So we are going to check here. Now you can see we are using an activity, right, to send an result. So whatever option you have selected, back to result. So that pattern, how we can actually design, is called as an activity result. So even for activity result, we will be using something called intent. Intent will be the common object class which we will be using across, right, in order to make sure that communication is happening between two different activities, right? So that is called as an activity result. Now let's start up with coding this part. So that will come under communication itself. So let me create an activity here. Let me call it as a new other blank activity. So this one, let me call it as calling activity maybe, right? So this will be, let's say this is my first activity, right? Let me click on finish. Okay. So here what we are going to do here is, so let's take an example, very simple example, that we are going to drag and drop a button here, let's say, right? So this button, let us say this button is for to get data from some other activity. Let me call it as, let us say I want to get countries data. Let me call it as BTN countries something, right? So what I want is, whenever I click on this countries button, right, it has to go to the next activity and should give all the list of countries I have, and when I select anything, right, immediately it should close that activity and get back to this window and should show what exactly is being selected. So that is the agenda of how we can actually create that part, right? Now let's go back to the calling activity here. Now here let us see how we can actually do that. So this is very important, guys. I just want you to make sure, if I'm writing something wrong, I just want you guys to notice that part, because, right, just give some attention to this. Okay, so first thing what we have to do is, anyways, so what we are planning to do here is, we want to move from this activity to the next activity, right? So let me say I am going to create one more activity, which is activity other. Let me call it as countries activity, right there. So this activity will actually show all the list of countries. So first let us create this countries activity first, and then let us see how we can actually call this countries activity from my calling activity. So in this countries activity, let us say we want, so I want a list view, right, and we'll fill the list view with countries. Okay, perfect. Now this is our activity countries. Let's go back to this. So this list view, let's call it as list view countries. So now once you are done with your list countries, we have to fill the countries, right? So let's get back to the class. So whenever this activity loads, right, I want to fill all the set of countries we have. So let us say I can do using my array list, right? So let us say I'm going to take array list here, string. So let me call it as LARRLST countries is equal to new array list. Right? Now here what I'm going to do here is, now here you can see I don't have to actually use add always, right? I can directly give some countries directly here. If you can give this using your command separator, right, it should actually accept everything. As I'm not giving anything, it is giving an error. Now basically this is one type of thing which you can do. Normally we follow array lists add. We can actually use our countries dot add. This is the normal pattern which we normally follow. Let's follow the same thing. Now let's say, so I'm going to add some countries, so let me just give some countries here. And so let's say I'm going to give something. You're asking that question, right? Okay, fine. Okay, let us do that part. No issues. So what she was asking is, let me go to array strings here. So here what she wants is, she wants to define string name. Let's say this is countries list, right? So here let's say I want to give the list of all the countries we have, right? So here let's say I want to give some countries name, and what I'll be doing is, let us say I'll give all the countries with semicolon separated, and just giving some separator so that I can actually fill my array list. Okay, so let's say I'm giving something called India, semicolon, maybe US, semicolon, let's say Dubai, right? You have Australia, right? You have, let's say, you have Saudi, right? You have Canada, you have Japan, you have China, right? You have, let's say, you have Abu Dhabi, some things, okay? Semicolon, let's say, what are different, Africa, some things. I'm just giving, it can be continent or country, doesn't matter, right? Okay, let's say I have these countries list, right? Where what I have taken is, I have taken all the countries in my configuration file, and I want to map these things into my countries. Let's do that part. So I'm going to create my array list. So what we will do here is, so from these strings we want to get the data to here, right? So that is what we are actually interested to. Now why do we need to actually create strings XML is so that we can actually make some centric things actually, right? We can actually make that centric thing so that we can actually access them across our construct. Normally we use these resource files normally to create something in our XML files, right? Not into the class files which we have, right? So basically what happens is, if you don't have the XML files, right, normally what happens, again and again you have to create your own APK files, and then you have to deploy into the machine, right? I mean, whenever you create an APK, you have to recompile it and you have to create into your thing, right? Hello?